what I want to share with you, and again, Bob asked me to just sort of share with you, really have a conversation with you about some of our experience in Philadelphia. And I'm looking at Mary Lou because she inspired one of the slides I'm going to share with you. But we're all here, and this is why it's a privilege. We're privileged people, and it's a privilege for us to be here in terms of achieving the common purpose for real-world changes in early childhood for kids. And we all know what that is. At the end of all of our logic models is success. And I don't mean necessarily just the accumulation of numbers, but I mean that inside-out success that's expressed by the smiles of the kids. And here's the slide that Mary Lou contributed to me, which is a beautiful slide that reminds us to achieve this success, we face enormous challenges. Now, that couldn't be any more of an understatement in reference to the challenges we really face. But facing these challenges really sort of puts us in both the scientific and the moral domains. It's not rare. It's rare sometimes that we talk about the moral domains in research conferences. But I have been in this space for a long time. I'm an old person. I started when I came to Philadelphia. I was 6 foot tall and I had a lot of hair, and I've been worn down over the years. I haven't been extinguished, thank God. But the moral domain is very, very important to me, and this quote summarizes that for me. Methods always must be judged by more than merely their effectiveness. Methods that have no tether to what is realistic or possible are merely an intellectual exercise. So often we have these incredibly precise, creative logic models that represent our best knowledge of the key linear relationships between all these factors. And then what happens to these logic models in the real world is that our effective parts, we find, just don't seem to fit in the real world. I remember a quote from, my favorite quote from Ed Ziegler, who is one of my heroes. Ed said, we know what to do, we just don't know how to get people to do it. And that is a really profound statement. We know what to do. But I challenge Ed on that question, because I say to Ed, the truth is we know in part. We know how parts function, but we know less about how wholes function in real context. So we might have like a really fantastic gold-plated carburetor that passes all the tests. But the carburetor, unless it's connected to another set of functioning parts, don't really get the vehicle to move very far, even if it passes all the engineering carburetor tests. How do all the parts fit well so that the whole runs effectively and economically? And we must actually underscore that economically as you read the newspapers and hear our policymakers quoting economical policy arguments. We kind of moved away from the moralistic arguments of doing the right thing and addressing equality, but we're now talking about the bang for the buck, and so we got to be effective and economical in the moral domain. Two words jump out to me as an old person, and they are integration and continuity. And we just go to our dictionary to form, coordinate, and blend into a functioning, unified whole, integration. And continuity, the state of being continuous, an uninterrupted succession or flow, a coherent whole. So integration and continuity are really key as we think about what we're trying to do in the scientific and moral domain. When we look at integration, oh my gosh, we take a look at the programmatic level and all we see basically are lots of disconnects. Sometimes I feel that we don't want to realistically identify the disconnects that are actually there. We're thinking that if we create core standards and we create mandates, the disconnects will go away. But there are actually really significant capacity gaps that we have at the child level in being able to measure clearly where children are. At the classroom level, we have siloed curricula. We got a curricular box for everything you can imagine. but they're not necessarily put together. At the family level, we've changed our language. We don't like now the word family involvement. We have to use the word engagement. And the word engagement, though, is morally a lot more powerful than involvement. It means two-way arrows. Remember those Bronfenbrenner two-way arrows? It means bidirectionality, and bidirectionality should be equal vector strength. That's a really big those are really big disconnects for us. In terms of the program level, oh my gosh, we've got staff who are in Philadelphia. I mean, staff are trying to figure out. We're the poorest of the 10 largest cities in the United States. We have about a 30% poverty rate, and our school district has been taken over by the state, and our school district is too poor to find the match for the Head Start program. So our school district is so poor they might not be able to take the federal program for poor children. So we've got lots of staff disconnects. On the continuity level, there's no shortage of disconnects. We have siloed systems. At the community level, we have early childhood systems that are not connected to our public service systems, which are not connected to each other. On the education level, we've got lack of transition disconnects. The whole Head Start impact study raised major issues for us who are fans of Head Start about the disconnects between early childhood, kindergarten, and the big jump between kindergarten and first grade. In many states, like our primitive state of Pennsylvania, kindergarten is not mandatory. So we have all kinds of disconnects, especially with respect to special education. So we've been working on an initiative called Great Beginnings for Great Schools, because you can't have a great school unless the children have a great beginning. And basically, this has been an integration and continuity effort of 3 large evidence-based capacities that we've developed for the city of Philadelphia with our major partners. And these are the Kids Integrated Data System, EPIC, the Evidence-Based Program for Integrated Curricula, and the Distributed Leadership Program with the school districts and the unions. And I'm just going to water ski over these. I'm going to just point out some of these things. But I mainly want to talk about the substantive elements that we need to develop, and we can't be siloed. How we need to increase. I'm always reminded of the fact that if you're 10 feet below water and you raise 9 feet, that's a pretty big effect size, you still drowned. Okay, so the question is that we got to get above threshold. So we have EPIC, and EPIC was designed by a lot of people over a long period of time to deal with the disconnects within early childhood programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the brief time I have, but it's designed to make these connections programmatically within the program. The Kids Integrated Data System is designed to take an integrated program and to connect it with these major service systems that are actually accounting for more variance. In our research, the impact of these risk factors on children across time account for more variance than the impact of the programs that we are doing, right? So the question is, when we actually take a look at the variance of the life experience of the kids outside of the classrooms, they account for a whole heck load of variance. So we got to learn how to connect to those and make those real. Then it's distributed leadership. I like this. I went crazy on PowerPoint, but I like these little people because it's distributed leadership is how you create the robust network of educators who are making the programmatic connections within and across. We have to have empowered, socially networked educators who are bringing things together, and also in school buildings are breaking down the silos across programs. So this is very, very important for us. And when we first did, well, I'll move on because my time is short, as I am, so matches there. Integrated data system, for those of you who don't know the work we've been doing both in Philadelphia and now nationally through the MacArthur Network, we've been basically developing a practice about how you can take data from different systems at the individual level and use the across Department of Health and Human Services, housing, public health, every little place that touches the little hands, how you can get that data together to form policy, planning, and evaluation capacities. We started doing that. Well, its use is very, very important now. as we basically talk about having these archival administrative data systems where you can discipline the systems so you really make sure that, because there's a lot of bad data in these systems. So part of our system is how you discipline the systems to identify quality data, improve the quality of the systems, so you can actually monitor critical transitions and transactions across the life course. They're really, really incredibly powerful if the systems are scientifically disciplined. And we talk about this in terms of the ethic of basically talking about the legal issues that you need, the scientific issues that you need, the ethical issues of use, and the political and economic issues that you need to have a mature integrated system. The result of an integrated system is not so much to provide research findings, but that's like the R word. And if you go to our practitioners and you talk about research, it's like talking to practitioners about assessment. It's the A word. So in reference to research, it's basically actionable intelligence. That's what we want. We want findings that are actually going to stimulate dialogue among smart people so that action can be taken that's evidence-based. We want it to inform cross-agency collaboration and definitely to improve quality. We have conducted over, some of them supported, I see John there, some of them supported by IES, some of them supported by foundations. We've conducted over 20 published studies that I can send you the list of. All of them that were not designed to advance our CVs, that was a secondary benefit, but primarily they're all pressed to be disciplined to have policy and practice changes. So the data on early risk exposure, City Council used our lead study of a population of the impact of lead toxicity on the growth trajectory in math and reading of children in Philadelphia. They used that to pass stricter requirements for landlord lead testing. We indicated, in terms of Head Start, we looked at the access problems. Homeless kids and maltreated kids, guess what? They weren't getting into Head Start. So we actually looked at the disparities of those kids getting into Head Start, and then the issue of programs that will benefit those kids. In terms of improving protective factors, we actually developed for the city and incorporated into the kids database a means of actually the city prior to 2000 had no knowledge of the early childhood experiences of kids coming into the school district. I believe they were John Locke philosophers and tabula rasa was operating. But we created a system that got institutionalized called the Early Care and Education Interview, which is a system that identified kids, which allowed us to evaluate and look at readiness for all kindergarten children. The data from the kids database actually, we are able to look at early childhood programs going into kindergarten, and we found out that the programs, I'm trying to use a really high scientific word, so maybe I'll just use suck. The programs sucked with respect to math, Doug will appreciate that. They sucked with respect to math, and they sucked with respect to social skills and behavioral approaches to learning, and they did pretty decently in terms of literacy. But we used that data to inform the development of the EPIC program community-wide. The work that we've been doing in terms of an integrated system, and I can send you the link here, the MacArthur Foundation got excited about this, and Dennis Culhane and I developed a network called Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy that now has 10 sites that account for 20% of the US population. These are sites that have mature integrated data systems that we potentially have the capacity to do work across systems. So we now have a conversation with Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, and Philadelphia about something that we might be able to do. The integrated data system really gave birth to EPIC. And EPIC was an attempt to go under the hood in early childhood programs and bring these 4 components in. And I'm just going to quickly water ski because Lisa's about ready to tell me I have 5 minutes left. How am I doing, Lisa? 5.5. Okay, thanks, Lisa. Okay, I told you, that's a pretty good prediction. So EPIC was designed and tested within the existing resources. We weren't going to test something to be a Cadillac. We had to develop the Volkswagen. And we were going to test it within the existing resources, and we were focused on the largest program in Pennsylvania. And in that program, we focused on integrated assessment. And there, the issue is, and I can go under the hood for this, but time won't permit, but you have to have assessment that can provide individual differences for all children. It has to be aligned to the curriculum. It has to be connected to the curriculum. And it has to show from a psychometric perspective that you can monitor growth in 2-month periods, because we can't wait for the 4 points PPVT changes after 9 months. We got to be able to have something that informs curriculum. Integrated curricula is integrated across all domains: math, literacy, social, emotional approaches to learning. It has to have an evidence-based developmental sequence. It has to use the full pedagogy of the early childhood classroom, and it has to be linked now, especially with the designation requirements, linked to class best practices. We have to engage families, mobilizing the home nurturing network. Boy, that's an interesting thing. Guess what? Parents who show up to parent conferences don't necessarily represent the home nurturing network. Maybe it's a Sunday school teacher who's doing most of the nurturing. Who knows? But you got to find out. You can't assume. Identify the home educators. We created and embedded in the curriculum weekly activities to engage connected to the curriculum that were done by the home educators. Then progress-based, evidence-based success, progress-based communications at home. And I'm going to talk more about this because a couple more minutes are left. With respect to professional development, it's learning communities, enhancing competency, self-efficacy, building teams with shared responsibilities, promoting leadership. So we did a randomized control trial, found significant goodness. You can read about that. I'm not going to unpack that given my waning minutes. I want to lastly talk about distributed leadership program. So we know with the class and everything we know morality-wise, it's the hands that touch the little hands that bring quality. But there's so many threats to the hands that touch the little hands. Stress, low efficacy, isolation, no teamwork, no leadership opportunities. And this brought us to the realization across many of the school reform programs, distributed leadership across multiple individuals in schools is really powerful for school reform. So we gotta say no to this modal form of school leadership, and we gotta move to distributed leadership teams. How do we create dynamic, robust networks that build trust, collaboration, emotional support? Guess what? Emotional support, instructional support, and organizational support is what teachers need to actually foster continuity. John DeFlaminis, Jim Spillane, and a group of us worked to develop the distributed leadership program, large randomized controlled trial funded by Annenberg, and it had 3 components to it. And I can send you volumes of reports and all the statistics too. But basically, team development, thank you, Leslie, team foundation, developing the foundation for teams. And then most importantly, teams working with faculty, team members empowered to form collaborations, and focusing on instructional improvement and using student data to inform instruction. And then finally, school-wide change, norms for trust, collaboration, and innovation, collaboration around instructional improvements, and then documenting instructional improvements school-wide. John and his colleagues did 40 schools in Philadelphia randomly selected, showed significant differences on all these measures and all these constructs in these boxes. So what are we trying to do with Great Beginnings for Great Schools now? We've got the mayor's approval, we've got the district's approval, and we're doing fundraising now for this. It's situating and bringing together EPIC and kids at the early childhood level, and you see the background in this context, going to scale, and in schools, creating the programmatic pathways to student success. Here is where those little people putting the puzzle pieces is so important. We do not have programmatic pathways. Most happens is that instead of a pathway, what we have are these broken circles with all kinds of this netting in between, all kinds of noise. We can't get signals through. We have to work on these pathways. And we believe that having integrated data about the children's lives, having good integrated programming, and building distributed leadership where we change the culture of schools to actually make them dynamic social networks of information exchange and collaboration instead of foxholes where teachers are hiding from parents, administrators, and No Child Left Behind evaluators, and maybe even Head Start, and maybe even Head Start PRISM people. I know that there's a lot more fear motivating people than purpose, and that's a very bad thing from the moral domain. So what we need to say goodbye to you, what we need is integration and continuity. It's not plastics anymore, graduate. It's integration and continuity. Real, sustainable connections. We cannot afford one-off projects. We've got to really work with folks in the moral domain to see why our logic models are falling apart. Because what we really want is the elementary school express. We want an effective and economic vehicle to success. Thank you for your time.